Hi, I'm Bryan Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Township Officials of Illinois. Today, we are here to present a budget and levy program as part of the general administrative duties of the Township Highway Commissioners. We're happy to be participating in this program in conjunction with IDOT and the other partners. This program, we feel, is very important as part of your duties as a Township Highway Commissioner. Today, you will be hearing from not only myself, but from Jerry Crabtree, our Township Officials of Illinois Associate Director and Education Coordinator, and also from Jim Donelan, who is the Executive Director of the Township Officials of Illinois Risk Management Program. We're going to go through the budget and levy process. We're going to take turns doing it, and I think you will find that it's a good overview as you begin your term as a Highway Commissioner and your process in preparing your budget and levy. In terms of the budget, we will be talking about your guess at income and expenditures for your fiscal year, the appropriation designating money for particular uses, and of course the levy asking for your share of the local property tax for the upcoming fiscal year. Again, these are all very important issues, and so we're ready to get started.
Hi, I'm Jerry Crabtree, Associate Director and Education Coordinator for the Township Officials of Illinois. And I'm glad to be here today to talk about the budget process and what Highway Commissioners should start looking at when they start to talk about the budget process. One of the primary needs that you have a budget is to meet the upcoming needs of your township or your road district, to also consider meeting the needs of the public, and you need to develop goals and objectives of what you want to achieve in a particular fiscal year or budget year as you do your planning and the budget process. What we recommend that you use as a required documents, or what you need to look at, would be the Highway Code, the Illinois Budget Law, and any information related to MFT funds. We have a statement around the TOI office that if it's not in the budget, it can't be spent. So we need you to take a sincere look at where you were financially in your road district budget, where you are currently, and then where you need to be. We do have this thing called the Budget and Appropriation Ordinance and process that you're all familiar with. We have a lot of additional reference material that's on our TOI website, and some PowerPoint presentations and other documents in the Resource Center there, the Download Center, that could help you expand on what we're talking about today. Overall, the ordinance process itself is a document that provides authority to expend funds, and it outlines, it's a budget outline of the upcoming needs of your road district. So if you were looking at a particular piece of equipment, or if you were looking at maybe a rental agreement, or we're going to get into some of those topics today as we talk about this budget process. You want to adopt a budget within or before the end of the first quarter of your fiscal year. That's kind of an important date to, if it begins before July 1st, that's an important component to remember. It's also good to always focus on the fact that no budget's ever final. A budget itself contains estimates. It's income from all sources and expenditures, and it is an estimate of where you are regarding what money you have coming in and what you plan on spending. Budgets can be amended at any time throughout the fiscal process, and it's just basically like starting over. It doesn't mean that, there's some guidelines on transfer that we may talk about later, but I want to talk about individual steps that are included in this process. Step one, we say, would be the tentative budget and appropriation ordinance. It is prepared by the Highway Commissioner, and you are required to do this 30 days prior to the public hearing, and you need to file a copy with your township clerk. And again, we've got a couple Excel spreadsheets in the Download Center at www.toi.org. These documents are a little aged, but Excel spreadsheets are still usable, and we have a couple documents that'll give you guidelines. There is no exact statutory budget process. We've just developed these steps and checklists that you need to go through as you continue that process. Regarding a tentative budget, the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity had forms at one time, and we still continue to use these forms. We just edit those with changing the date. They had the responsibility of creating those forms, and we've adapted those in our Download Center. You can work with others if you're not sure. We think that, it's always nice to have a township attorney or a CPA, but we also realize that budgetary constraints don't make that possible for every township. But if you do have those resources, it's always a good idea to have those people on hand or make an appointment with them to sit down. Even your supervisor or other highway commissioners. I think that one of the nice things about what we do in township government is we learn from our neighbors. And you can maybe go to a county association meeting, or I know the highway commissioners have meetings across the state in the different counties that operate under township government. Maybe talk to them at the summer seminar that the highway commissioners do and find out how they do their budget process. Find out, ask questions that you may have about that, and some common answers could be achieved. You can look at the form. We have a slide in this presentation that will show you the DCEO form that we've used for several years, and it gives you guidelines and budgetary numbers. In the budget process, you do not have to have a checkbook for every line item that you have. We recommend that you have one checkbook and that you separate the funds in that account by a designated line item number. And the slide in front of you will show you what we recommend, but again, this is a guideline. You can do what you need best, what works best for your township. In the DCEO forms that we have in our center, there's a cover page that explains the need. There's the actual columns that help you and the taxpayer monitor past, current, and future spending. The rest of the ordinance contains proposed numbers for each fund that you've established within your budget, designating where those funds are going to be expended. There's the general road and bridge is but one. You must list each fund on a cover page and detail in each section what's going to be included. We've included ourselves in this presentation examples of funds in the budget. Again, this is a guideline. You could add to it, you could take away from it. There's the General Road and Bridge Fund. There's administration, maintenance, if you need to designate funds for audit purposes. Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Not all townships participate in IMRF, but if you do, that's where you would include that. Social Security, your Permanent Road Fund, Joint Bridge, and Equipment and Building. As we said, those can be adapted to fit your needs. Within each fund, you may need line items for personnel, legal, audit, insurance, commodities or supplies that you're purchasing for the road district. We have the opportunity for capital outlay if you're planning on a building, equipment, or vehicles. There's some provisions that we've helped establish in state law regarding a capital outlay program. We recommend a contingency line for those areas where you kind of do not necessarily budget as predicted, and so where you need to transfer some money. It's okay not to have each line item for all of your funds. I think that, I always like to tell people when they call that your budget's a guideline. It's a guideline on where you think you're going to be spending money over the next 12 months, and you can always change. You can always amend within guidelines established by state law. When we talk specifically about the capital fund in your slide presentation materials, you'll see that. This is specifically when you are accumulating funds. I always like to say that the media doesn't always comment on the fact when a township has a considerable amount of funds accumulated. They'll comment on the fund, but not what they've been saving in that fund for. It's an amount of money being dedicated for a project or equipment. And there's guidelines when you establish those funds and accumulate them. You have to answer 3 basic questions. What's the money for? How long do you think it's going to take to spend it? And when do you anticipate that date? The purpose of the dedication or the duration. I mean, how long you think it's going to take to save the funds for the particular project that you're wanting the township to participate in. So one of the nice things about townships balancing their budgets is when they do accumulate funds, they're dedicated for a specific project where cash is usually paid for the project and it's not financed. Step 2 in this budget and appropriation ordinance process is when we dedicate or indicate that the clerk makes available for public inspection. This is a very important component of this process because although township don't necessarily circulate or request a lot of public participation, we do want to always include an opportunity for the public to review budget documents, to review the budget process itself, because it's where these tax funds are being spent, and it's important for the public to be aware of that. A public hearing is required, and that takes us into step 3 when we actually put out the notice for the public hearing. It is the responsibility of the clerk to arrange for the public hearing to be held. You do have to publish in a local newspaper 30 days prior to the scheduled date of the hearing. And you have to post, if you do not have a newspaper, which we're seeing a lot in the last 5 to 10 years, some of our local small newspapers are not publishing a weekly paper anymore. Then if you do not have a newspaper, you're required to post in 5 of the most public places. We always say you could also go to the county level. You want to look for a paper that is most likely to be printed and put available in the hands of the township residents where you live. And if you are going to take advantage of the 5 most public places, I had a call a few years ago that somebody was asking, we really don't have a stoplight, we don't have a post office, we have a telephone pole in the center of the town, and can we post on that telephone pole? And I said, that's a decision that you can make, but you need to find the most visible place to put those notices, and you can always call our office if you've got questions about those. Moving on to step 4 in this budget and appropriation process is when the Township Board actually adopts the budget at the public hearing. It is required for a Township Board to pass that budget. The Township Board may alter the budget, but only decreasing line items is permitted. I always say also, when people call with questions about the decrease guidelines, you cannot decrease it to a point that would not permit a highway commissioner to perform their statutory duties in a road district. The Township Board may not move funds without the Highway Commissioner's approval. By the Constitution and the establishment of township government, the Highway Commissioner is considered a separate unit of government, not under the direct control of the township. This budget process is probably the only time when the Township Board has control over the amount of funds being spent in that particular road district. So it is required to have the budget passed. The trustees and the board, the Township Board, is required to review the forecasted budget. Changes can be made at this time. Once those changes are adopted by the board, it is the Highway Commissioner's responsibility to put that budget into action. And if equipment is needed and the money is in the budget, it's not necessarily required to go before the board for approval. This takes us to the next step in this budget and appropriation process, which is step 5 as outlined in the handouts before you, is that you have to file a copy of the budget after it's adopted with the county clerk. These adoptions and these file certifications or submittal of approval of budgets, we advise townships on always that this is your proof of following the process as outlined by state law. And if you have questions about where to file them or the process, the paperwork that's required, each individual county clerk has a guideline. We recommend that you contact them, develop a relationship with them, because they may have an additional piece of paper on these filings that's unique to their county. But it's always a good idea to double check with them before, so that you have the opportunity to know what they're expecting and you're meeting their guidelines. We put together a slide in this presentation that will end my component about talking about the budget itself, and that is the budget timeline. Most road districts' fiscal year begins on April 1st. I get this call a lot at the TOI office. It is not set in statutory and state law that a fiscal year has to start at April. Some do July. Some may have other fiscal years. This is a comment that most of them that we come in contact with across the state begin on April 1st. But this timeline puts into perspective what's required from the actual preparing of the budget in step 1. We talked about budget inspection. The publishing of the notice in the local newspaper is the second step. In March, this 30-day window where you have to provide members of the public the opportunity to inspect that budget or do a review of what you're trying to achieve and looking at the fiscal year from where you were, where you currently are in your spending, and this is a forecast of where you want to go. That 30-day inspection in March is required before you have final board action. That step indicates that final board approval is needed. Step 4 is holding the hearing, and then you end with the adoption of the budget, and finally by filing a copy of that adopted budget with the county clerk. So we hope that this budget outline process gives you a snapshot picture of the different steps. We've developed these 6 steps to help you prepare, discuss, and implement that budget. What I would like to stress as I close is that remembering that a budget is a guideline. A budget does not tie you to expenditures. There are catastrophic events that happen, and in your line of work that you do, you've got storms, flooding that could happen. That a budget is a guideline, and that what you need to focus on is that is a forecast, and that it can be changed. There are processes. We've indicated some of them in this presentation, but if you have any questions about how to achieve that change, what you can do as far as raising or decreasing levies when you're trying to calculate where the funds are going to come from, or even how to list those budget line items in your budget. We are more than welcome to answer those questions, and we welcome them here at the Township Officials of Illinois. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jim Donelan, Executive Director of Township Officials of Illinois Risk Management Association, or TOIRMA, and we're proud and happy to be a part of this program with the Illinois Department of Transportation and Township Officials of Illinois. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the marriage between the Township Board, or the Township side, and the Road District, because they are technically 2 separate units of government. However, there is a financial marriage there. And as most of you know, most townships have 4 trustees, and there are a few out there that have more trustees than that because they're coterminous townships. But a typical township board, there are 4 trustees and a supervisor, and they're involved in the financial transactions and financial budget decisions and the levy process with the road district. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. There are specific powers that the township board has. For example, and this goes hand in hand with risk management, some of the problems that have occurred with townships and road districts over the years related to the financial side. And so we think it's important that we all mention when doing this presentation and talking about budgets and levies, that we point out that the Township Board, first of all, the trustees used to be called Township Auditors, and those functions really haven't changed over the years. They're deeply involved in approving the bills that are presented by the Highway Commissioner to the clerk. They review the accounts of the supervisor and the Highway Commissioner. The board should also be involved in requiring verification of accounts. And what that means is the board should not be shy about asking for copies of the bank statements to review during the meetings, making sure that the budget still has the authority needed to pay bills, and to actually look at the receipts for the bills that are presented. The Township Board can be involved in hiring decisions on the town side, but on the road district side, the Highway Commissioner is essentially the CEO of the road district. And we like to say that if you think about your county sheriff's office, the county sheriff is the CEO of the sheriff's office, of course. The county clerk's office, in the county clerk's office, the county clerk is in charge of that office, not the county board. However, there's a budget marriage there as well. And that's not unlike the township and road district side. The Highway Commissioner, again, is the CEO of the road district. Now, the supervisor of a township is the treasurer of all town funds, but also the road district treasurer by virtue of having the office of township supervisor. He or she actually must sign all checks in order for them to be valid. If the supervisor's signature, or technically road district treasurer's signature, is not on a road district check, then it's technically not valid. So it's important to keep that in mind. Of course, the supervisor then must receive and pay out all the township funds once the bills are approved. He or she is in charge of keeping the account of receipts and expenditures of all township funds, and also preparing the annual financial statement for the road district and the annual treasurer's report. Those are statements that must be done on an annual basis. Now, the Highway Commissioner, as this slide indicates, the title is Township Board versus Highway Commissioner. I like to categorize that as a Township Board with the Highway Commissioner. Again, because they are separate units of government that should be working together. The Township Board has some powers over the budget. And as Jerry indicated earlier, that's the primary the decision time when the board does actually have some leverage over the road district. Just keep that in mind. However, the Township Board must approve the road district tax levy and also must approve the budget and appropriation ordinance or a portion deemed necessary, as Jerry indicated earlier. Now, if there's a vacancy in the office of Township Highway Commissioner, then the board is charged with filling that vacancy per the statute. Now, when it comes to changing the budget, there's certain responsibilities that are delegated per statute to the Highway Commissioner with involvement of the Township Board. So assuming, for example, that the road district budget is in place and there's some changes as the year progresses, there's a need to move some money around. Well, the Highway Commissioner has the authority to initiate per line item a limited 10% within a fund transfer. In other words, the 10% cap per fund. He or she can move funds within that fund by line item, but only up to 10%. Highway Commissioner has the authority to initiate that, and he or she is the only person that can initiate that line item transfer. But the Township Board is to be notified and included and provide blessing for that transfer. So there's still involvement there. Now, if there is a major change that, for example, if there's a significant storm and there needs to be a major change, let's say in purchasing salt, and there's not enough money in the line item or in the fund, there's some, as far as authority goes, the Township Highway Commissioner can indeed amend the budget. Now, that process is the same as adopting the budget, meaning that basically a new budget has to be put on file, and you follow the 6 steps that Jerry outlined earlier. Now, as far as fund transfers go, they're limited to the eligibility of the funds. Again, we have the 10% rule by fund per line item. The town fund expenditures may not be increased. Highway Commissioner must initiate, again, keep those things in mind. Now, when it comes to amending the budget, not able to transfer within a fund is something to keep in mind. Unexpected equipment purchases, again, are reasons why you would need to amend the budget. Again, like the salt example is probably a reason why you might need to amend the budget. Unexpected needs for personnel. In other words, if you had to hire more and increase a line item dramatically, those are other reasons why you might need to amend the budget. Now, as far as fund transfers go, the general road fund, as an example, to other highway funds, we really don't recommend that. The general fund or general road fund, road and bridge fund, is a fund that pretty much can cover any expenditure, any conceivable expenditure that the road district may have. Permitted uses of the general road fund essentially cover any conceivable highway expenditure. Included line item to cover the desired expenditure in the budget appropriation ordinance are all things to keep in mind. When it comes to restricted funds, I'm going to give an example of the permanent road fund. The permanent road fund, those dollars can only be used on the road directly. And they can't be used, for example, to build a building for the road district. Those are some restricted uses. And transfers are prohibited. Now, when it comes to non-restricted funds, again, funds that allocate revenues for general and valid purposes, transfers of money from non-restricted funds is permissible. But if it's, again, the general road and bridge fund, it's really not necessary. The budget authority can be provided. Now, road and bridge funds should not be transferred to the general town fund either. Now, other fund issues that have arisen over the years. We get the question quite a bit, TOI gets the question quite a bit, can you borrow from a fund? And generally speaking, the recommendation is that if you're going to borrow from one fund to another, that of course it be documented, it be a part of not only in the road district records, but put it as a part of the township records. And the general consensus is that borrowing funds from one fund must be paid back within a year. That's something to keep in mind. What if a fund is no longer needed? Well, they still can't be transferred to for another purpose. Again, those restricted funds come into play, and it's something to keep in mind. Now, we appreciate being involved with the budget and levy process here, and it's nice for the Illinois Department of Transportation to ask us to participate. Again, we believe strongly at TOIRMA that having a well-educated elected official helps reduce risk and helps township government run more and road district government run more efficiently. So thank you for this opportunity.
I'm here now to speak to you about the levy process. The levy is very important to you as a Township Highway Commissioner, and it's important to the township in general because if you do not do your levy properly or fail to do your levy at all, you have no money to operate. You will get $0. So this is very important, and I hope you will take this very seriously and follow the steps that you need to. I would encourage you first, though, in order to get started with the levy process, find your previous year's levy. Talk to your county clerk because your county clerk is the one that extends your taxes for you. So make sure that you have good information before you start the levy process. But to begin the levy process, step one, you estimate an aggregate tax levy. Now this must be done at least 20 days prior to its final adoption or certification. For the road district, this is done by the Highway Commissioner. You also then need to, as step two, is determine if truth in taxation is applicable to your new tax levy. The truth in taxation law, which has been in effect since the early 1980s, requires that if your estimated aggregate levy is more than a 5% increase over the previous year's extension, that you must follow through and abide by the Truth in Taxation Act. Finally, step three is you certify and file your levy. The levy must be filed with the county clerk no later than the last Tuesday in December each year. Now, I will make a point here that I think it's very important that townships and township road districts do their levy earlier in case there would be questions or problems. So if you want to start the process September, October, November, but you do have until the last Tuesday in December to get it filed. Truth in taxation, I mentioned that. It's been around since the early 1980s, and in order to comply with the Truth in Taxation Act, if your levy is going to be more than 5% over last year's extension, you must first give a notice of a public hearing. Now, this notice is published in a newspaper, and the notice is given not more than 14 days nor less than 7 days prior to that public hearing. The notice must meet certain statutory guidelines. There are requirements for the size of the ad, and that can all be found on our website at toi.org. Now, at the public hearing that is held for Truth in Taxation, it is open to the public. I would encourage a highway commissioner, if indeed you have to have a Truth in Taxation hearing, that you be present, you explain your proposed levy, and you explain why it's increasing more than the 5% over last year's extension. Allow public comments. The public may have many questions when they see in this era when we're living where people don't like a lot of tax increases. They may want to have a lot of questions about why you're doing this. After they've had the opportunity to express their views, the hearing would continue. You would talk about the levy with the board and then adjourn the hearing. After the hearing, how do you go about filing your tax levy? Well, the levy is passed by an ordinance. It's broken down by fund, and you're certifying what you need in order to operate the road district. You can go to our website at toi.org in our download center, and there's plenty of resources there, samples that you can use. When you're looking at your tax levy ordinance, remember this. This is where you're asking for your share of the property tax collected for your road district. And you must make sure, this is a warning, make sure you're authorized to collect for each of the funds you intend to levy for. For example, The permanent road fund. If your township has never levied for permanent road before, you cannot simply go in and start levying for it. The permanent road fund requires a referendum and elector or voter approval before you're authorized to levy for permanent road. So make sure you're authorized. As I mentioned, talk to your county clerk, see what funds were extended for you in the last year, and go from there. If you look on our website, there are forms, and you can look at these forms and decide how you're going to proceed with your levy, but these forms are very useful tools for you. They're samples, they're guidelines. You do not have to use these exactly. You can tailor them to fit your own needs. Other considerations you might want to think about for your tax levy. Are you in a PTEL county? What does the PTEL stand for? Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. What it does, it limits the increases in property tax extensions to the lesser of 5% or the increase in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, for the year preceding the levy. Is your county under PTEL? I can't tell you that from looking at this presentation, but what you need to do, if you don't know, is contact your county clerk. Out of the 102 counties in the state, probably about half of them are under PTEL at this point, but not all. PTEL increases in the amount a township can levy and makes it possible with voter approval by a referendum. Referendums would supersede this and would allow you then to levy at a higher rate. But you may not be able to do that if your county is not currently under a tax cap. It may not apply to you. If you have township bonds for road purposes, those follow a different procedure altogether, and we won't get into that because it's a different thing. I like to call this the chess match. Which piece do I put and where do I put it and when? Well, your tax levy request is always done at the end of the year. And I've got an example here. Your levy request at the end of a calendar year, and we use the year 2013. Your request that is turned in and filed with the county clerk by the last Tuesday in December, they are extended and collected in the following year. So if we levied in December of 2013, your levy is extended and collected in 2014. Now, before July the 1st of 2014, you're passing your 2014-2015 budget. So there's some overlap here, and it does get sometimes confusing, but if you look at it and keep your papers together, you will be able to keep it straight. What about a major project? This might require you to save money and include it in your 2016 levy. Then you get your taxes levied, collected in 2014 and 2015. So make sure that you're following all the dates and keeping your paperwork straight. Again, I just want to point out to you that the levy is very important. It's important because if it's not done right or not done at all, you will not receive any funding for your road district. So it's important that you do it properly, and obviously if you have any questions, we'd always be able to answer those and help you out. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today on the budget process, and I hope that the 6-step process we outlined will help you plan for your budget year. As I close today, I'd like to comment on a couple of the things that the education program at the Township Officials of Illinois, what we refer to as our Township Government Education Network, does for you, the elected township official or highway commissioner. We have several programs highlighted on our website at www.toi.org under the Education tab. We offer webinars throughout the year on various topics. We call that our Lunch and Learn series. They're a 60-minute webinar program that you can have at your desk with your lunch, and all you need is an internet connection and a phone to participate. We offer many webinars on topics like meeting minutes, how to run an effective board meeting, several topics that would help you as an elected highway commissioner. Additionally, we hold 4 at a minimum quarterly professional development day education opportunities here in this office at the Township Officials of Illinois, located in Springfield. We try to take topics that we offer on a 60-minute time spot in webinars or at our other education events throughout the year, and we expand that into a 5-hour day. We feed you lunch, and we go into topics like contracts, personnel policies, all policies that every road district or township should have. So check our magazine for available professional development day topics. We encourage everyone to attend the fall conference this November. We'll be in Springfield here at the Crowne Plaza. We have over 20 educational opportunities that are scheduled, and there is something for everyone there, whether you're a new first-time highway commissioner or you're someone who's been in a couple terms as an elected township official. We offer programs for every elected position in the township itself. We take great pride in our education opportunities. It is our goal at the Township Officials of Illinois to give you the tools efficiently and effectively to perform your duties as an elected township official. So we look forward to seeing you at other events throughout the year in 2017 as well as in 2018. Have a great day.
Okay, again, I'd like to say thank you very much for Illinois Department of Transportation for asking us to participate in this program today. A couple things regarding the Township Officials of Illinois Risk Management Association, or TOIRMA, that I'd like to highlight. We're very proud of the fact that in 1986 we started with 2 townships, and presently we have 1,381 townships and road districts throughout the state of Illinois that we represent, as well as 314 multi-township assessment districts. A couple of things to keep in mind as new officials. Please remember that we have a website that's been recently updated, and that's www.toirma.org. And on the website, you can not only have access to good information that relates to good risk management practices, but we also have risk reminders, copies of past newsletters, as well as you're able to report claims now online if you'd like to do it that way, 365 days, 24 hours a day. We also have a new claims reporting hotline where you can report a claim 24 hours a day, 365 days a year via the toll-free number. And we also, most importantly, to keep in mind for those of you who are new, whether you're hiring, disciplining, or terminating employees, we have a human resources helpline. Keep that in mind. And you have access to all this, again, 24 hours a day via our website. But you're certainly welcome to give us a call and have those conversations over the phone as well. We pride ourselves in attending just about any township meeting that we've been invited to. We spend a lot of time out at county association meetings, county loss control meetings, the events that the Township Officials of Illinois put on, and as well as the township highway commissioners and supervisors and other organizations and divisions within township government. So keep us in mind, and again, thanks to IDOT for the invitation to be a part of all this. Thank you.
Again, I'd like to thank the Department of Transportation and the other sponsoring agencies for letting us make this presentation today. It's been great, and I really am excited with this new term beginning. There are a lot of new township officials out there, a lot of new highway commissioners. I want to thank Jerry Crabtree, a very great associate director and education coordinator, and Jim Donelan, executive director of TOIRMA, who we all work hand in hand to make sure that we help you, our members. And since 1907, the Township Officials of Illinois has worked representing township government in this state. And we want to keep township government strong, and having an educated and well-versed township official, township highway commissioner, we're going to make sure that township government survives for a long time. So again, thank you for today.